Welcome back to video 2 in our sequence of how do you design an XPRIZE and change the world. I hope you're having fun and you've put together a rock star team. And by the way, the team that you pulled together to design an XPRIZE, diversity of thought is really important, right? Having 2 or 3 women or guys that think exactly like you do is not going to give you your best result. Having a team that includes an engineer and a finance person and an artist and someone who knows the field and is passionate about the field is a good idea. And by the way, with Skype, you can reach anybody around the world. So if you're working on farmers out of poverty, maybe you're going to bring someone in from Ghana or Tanzania, or wherever it might be. All right. So in this second video, I want to give you what you need to design a great XPRIZE. Not a good XPRIZE, a great XPRIZE. So hopefully as you're putting this down and thinking it through and molding it and shaping it and remolding it and reshaping it, that you'll watch this video a couple of times and get the subtleties involved. So first of all, my recommendation is you pick a prize name. You're going to pick a name simply so you have something to refer to it as, right? It's our farming XPRIZE. For me, again, I'll use the Ansari XPRIZE. I originally, before the Ansari family funded it, it was my suborbital spaceflight prize, and then eventually became the Ansari XPRIZE. But pick a name, typically, was the Tricorder XPRIZE, the Global Learning XPRIZE. It's a generic name, but just so we'd like to know, what would you want to name your prize? It could be a cute name, it could be a serious name. It should be something that you can easily write down and refer to. Okay, second, again, the goal here is for you to pick out a target, a subcategory. Once you've listened to the donor intent, it's really important for you not to boil the ocean. Like, again, when I wanted, my intention with the original spaceflight prize was to change the mindset. And if I had set as a goal that the XPRIZE needed to have the first person land on Mars, we would not be having this conversation, right? It would have been way too hard, way too difficult. It would never have been done by an individual. It had to be something that was achievable by a group. In fact, let me go into an example of how you need to narrow and narrow and narrow until you get something that you think is actually winnable. Because at the end of the day, if you create a prize that is so elegant, so beautiful, but so difficult that no one wins, nothing matters. It doesn't matter. Nothing's changed. So I'm going to draw a little diagram here. Originally, when I was designing the Ansari XPRIZE, I had set a goal of 100 miles altitude. And the spaceship had to go up to 100 miles altitude and then come back down, and then within 2 weeks do it again. But when I was meeting with the engineers and talking about what's it like to re-enter from 100 miles altitude, we looked at it and said, when you're coming from 100 miles, your re-entry speeds are so hot that you can't use use composites easily. You need to have special exotic materials. And so we actually made a decision to lower it down to 100 kilometers or 62 miles. And honestly, today, if you're a fan of the XPRIZE, does it matter to you that it was 100 kilometers or 100 miles? I guarantee you, if we had said 100 miles altitude, it probably would not have been won with the technology that Burt Rutan built. So again, literally creating a target, so it wasn't going to Mars, it wasn't going to the moon, it wasn't even going to orbit. It was not even to 100 miles, it was 100 kilometers. The fact that someone did it changed the mindset, changed what was possible. So pick a target within corals, disaster, farming, feeding a billion, energy that is, if this is achieved, it's a significant step forward. And then balancing between something that's so big and so significant that it probably won't happen. And on the other hand, you don't want something that's so obvious, like, in this case, going up, 10 kilometers, you can do that in an airplane. You want something that is the balance between audacious and achievable. That's the right words. You want something that's a balance between audacious and achievable. All right, next thing. Really important, probably the most important thing where most people fail in designing an XPRIZE. You want your competition to be measurable, objective, and clear. So what do I mean by that? Again, a prize that said fly to space is none of those. When does space begin? Can you tell me? I mean, if you talk to people in Europe, it's 100 kilometers. Here in the United States, it was 50 miles. Other places, it's other things. So you have to set clear. And a person, 10 people into space once. So when we wrote the competition rules, it was, again, fly 3 people. Why? And I'm going to share with you something. Each of these rules sets out a specific rationale and reason. And you should have a reason for every single rule. So fly 3 people. Why did we pick 3 people? We figured one person was a stunt, and 10 people, why 10? The idea that you could have a pilot and 2 paying passengers, a couple, 2 friends going into space together, we figured that would be sort of, it was more than just a stunt event. So we picked 3. We had a very clear reason for that. Fly to 100 kilometers altitude. I explained that already. It's defined by space, both by the Air Force here in the United States and by the European Space Agency in Europe. So we picked 100 kilometers or 100 miles. Very clear altitude objective. And then land safely within 2 weeks, fly again. So how did we define land safely? Well, we said that the pilot actually had to live for 24 hours after landing. Pretty brutal, right? But that was one of the reasons. And then you had to fly with the same spaceship within 2 weeks. And we defined the same spaceship. We said you can replace 10% of the dry mass. This is in the weeds. I'm not going to be asking you for this level of design. But I just want to give you a sense that we had reasonable reasons for all of that, right? If a person broke a landing strut or a wheel, we didn't want to disqualify the vehicle for that. The notion was that if you made 2 flights with the same vehicle in 2 weeks, the cost of the second flight would be the fuel and the touch labor, which means you could have recurring flights and build a business on this. All right, so hopefully you're getting that in your competition rules. You're going to set a set of clear, measurable, objective rules. You might list them off one at a time. And then really important, if someone pulls off your rules and wins your XPRIZE, if they achieve it, did they create the impact you wanted? Really important to think about that because, and they're great stories. I won't go into them too much. You can research them if you want. Professor Richard Feynman wanted to have a nanotechnology prize, and he wanted people to build a nano machine, a working motor within a 1 millimeter cube, and that a graduate student at Caltech brought it to him under a microscope and said, hey, look, it's working. But it turns out that they weren't using nanotechnology. What they did was they used fine jeweler's tweezers and they built a little micromotor handmade under a microscope, and he paid him the $1,000, that was the prize, but didn't achieve the goal they wanted. So making sure that are your rules such that if it's achieved, you'll have the impact that you want, right? You don't want to pay out $10 million and not have the impact. All right, very important here. I almost skipped this one, probably one of the most important ones. You want to define the problem, the target, but not the solution. So a lot of people jump into, build a spaceship with jet engines and a rocket engine that wings of this size. No, when we created the original Ansari XPRIZE, we said this altitude, land, and within 2 weeks fly again. Honestly, I didn't care how you did it. It was completely open to any designs. And so it didn't pre-guess, right? I mean, if you could do it, if you could invent anti-gravity and achieve it, good for you. And so at the end of the day, by not specifying how it was done, but just what they had to do, but not specifying the solution, but just what they had to do, the 27 teams for the Ansari XPRIZE were taking off out of the water, were being towed behind an airplane, were being carried below an airplane, were above an airplane as a first stage, a helicopter first stage, a balloon first stage. We saw this Darwinian sort of exploration of every different way, and that's the beautiful thing about the prize you're going to design. if you don't specify the exact solution, but say, I don't care how you do it, if you achieve this set of minimalistic objective goals, you win, that's a beautiful XPRIZE. So, Raymond Ortega, who put up the $25,000, basically said, fly nonstop between New York and Paris. New York and Paris. That was it. Very elegant prize. He didn't say one engine, two engines. Didn't even specify which direction. He said you can go either direction. And Lindbergh did it with a single pilot, a single engine. Other people tried all kinds of things. Again, don't specify the solution, just what the objective is. All right. You're going to want in your prize to decide what is the format and the timeline. So there are different formats for prizes. You can look them up, do the research, but one is first to achieve. This was what the Ortega Prize and what the Ansari XPRIZE was. Ortega Prize, the first person to fly between New York and Paris, either direction. And then, of course, the Ansari XPRIZE, the first person to get to 100 kilometers altitude. So that's one option. The next one is pass the post. There's a starting gun, and all the competitors can start on day one, and it's the one who gets to the objective first. Your objectives can be the best by some objective clear measure, or the most by some objective clear measure. So what's the design of your objective clear measurable prize? And by the way, the other question is, are you going to put a deadline? The Ansari XPRIZE had a deadline, as did the Ortega Prize. Deadlines tend to force people to take the risk or to get out of design analysis paralysis and pick a design and build it. So I think deadlines are important. Would you have a deadline? All right, last two segments in this video I want you to think about is why is the team going to do it? Your goal is motivating hundreds of teams, maybe thousands of teams around the world. Why are they going to do it? One is the purse. Money is a way of objectively deciding something is worthwhile. So is it a $10 million purse, a $1 million purse? How will you decide the purse size? Let me give you a sense here that I think the purse should roughly be set at the amount of money you think a team will have to pay to make their solution work. So the original Ansari XPRIZE, I thought a team could actually build a private spaceship that could do those two flights with $10 million. In fact, Burt Rutan thought he could do it with $10 million of Paul Allen's money. It turned out it cost him $26 million. They're all optimists, so everybody competing with these prizes. So what's the purse size that you want? And then sometimes if the prize creates a platform that these innovators would never have access to the platform is why they do it. So, for example, Wendy Schmidt, the wife of Eric Schmidt, the outgoing chairman of Alphabet, wanted to do a prize around oil spill cleanup. And we rented the world's largest oil spill cleanup facility. We paid the cost for that, and then we invited teams to bring their oil cleanup technology to that facility, Omset, New Jersey, where they could demo what they did. So that's an example. We have one going on in carbon CO2 XPRIZE right now. We have a plant in Alberta and a plant in Wyoming where you hook up your machine and pull the CO2. These are like a $80 million investment by the state of Wyoming and the province of Alberta. All right, last thing. I'd love to know, who do you think would sponsor the prize? Do you have any ideas on, these are the list of people you would go to, or I would go to. Bonus, if you have $10 million and you want to sponsor the prize, that would be awesome. Not a requirement. Okay, so who do you think would sponsor the prize? Just looking for ideas. Would you crowdsource some money? Would you think this company would do it? Why would that company do it? So who and how to sponsor it. So would love your ideas there. All right, so this is video 2. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is, for me, the meat of the video lessons we're doing. A lot here. Thank you for your time and your energy and your passion.